Hello everyone and welcome back to A Few Good Frames. We're continuing on our Interstellar color breakdown, and in the last video we took a look at some of the frames where the main character is here on Earth, and in today's video we're going to look at some of these images out in space because they're wildly different and I want to see how they differ. I realize in the past two videos they've been pretty long, so I'm going to try to speed this one up. I also need to find a website with stock videos, high quality videos that I can color grade because I don't really have a body of work large enough to find frames that are similar enough to this so that I can color grade and show you guys. But if any of you have a recommendation for a website that has images or videos that could potentially look similar to these that I could color grade to test my theories here, then please leave it down in the comments below. But we're gonna get through this one pretty quick and see what we're working with. So just to recap, in the last frames, we developed a look like this, which I think is a little bit more neutral compared to this, which is just pushing a little bit warm, a little bit magenta. There was green in the highlights, green in the shadows, and magenta in the midtones. And we corrected that to look something like this. But that's what we did in the last video. If you're interested, feel free to go check it out. In this video, we're going to take a look at some of these frames, and I think we're going to start with this one and then that shot of. I'm assuming, just looking at this right now, already in the beginning, there's not too much going on. It's definitely a lot cleaner, but it does look slightly green, so we'll see what we can find, and this should be interesting. So the first one, the first thing we're going to talk about is exposure, and already the dynamic range is much greater in these images. We're pushing all the way up to the white point, all the way down to the black point, which you can see in parts of the frame right here. That looks like it's right there at the black point, and the white points being close to the top of his helmet, and over here, these lights back here. So way more contrasty than the previous images that we took a look at. In terms of color, let's just start tweaking some things and see if we can figure something out. So, all right, that's already looking a bit more neutral. So, compared to this, which is a little bit warm, see it on his skin and just correct it a little bit. Perfect. Let's see what the auto white balance does if we were to put it right here on the helmet. Okay, pretty close. So minus 561, I had it at minus 600. And it looks like we're pushing magenta. So the image was slightly green, which is kind of what I predicted. Great, looking good. So already, pretty big difference. Image was running a little bit green, a little bit warm. Interesting, but definitely not as pushed as the other image. Let's see if there's anything going on with the shadows. Doesn't look like it at all to me, but let's just play around. No, the shadows look perfect. Definitely no color shift going on in there. Yeah, midtones look fine as well. I think these images are definitely going to be a lot cleaner. Not as much manipulation to be done. So far it just looks like temperature intent. Running a little bit warm, running slightly green. Cool. That's going to be it for this image. The biggest thing to take away here is that they're using almost to the black point, almost to the white point. So way more contrasty, which is interesting. Okay, let's take a look at this image here, see if it follows some of the same techniques. It looks like it does. It looks like the clouds up here are a little bit yellow, so potentially just another temperature tint adjustment. And the dynamic range is not as wide in this one. You do have things touching black, or at least close enough to it. These shadows right here, but not enough of the image to be noteworthy. The white points, the widest points here are up near 800 on the waveform. So certainly not touching white like this right here, if they wanted to push that. So let's see if we just grab this color picker, place it on whites right here. I don't think I had it. Boom. Great. It's the exact same thing, except it was slightly magenta. And that looks 100% corrected. So what we're looking at here, it was a little bit warm, and it was a little bit green. Excuse me, magenta. So before and after, before and after. A lot of yellow up here in the highlights, and then correct it out. So nothing too out of the ordinary. Temperature, a little bit yellow. Tint was a little bit magenta. Cool. Okay, potentially we might see something different here. I'm not too sure. Doesn't look like there's anything favoring. Like in the shadows, midtones, highlights, looks pretty standard. Let's see what the picker gives us. Boom. All right, same thing. It was running a little bit warm, and it was running a little bit green, but certainly nothing too out of the ordinary here. So before and after, you can see it on a skin tone. Just a general golden hue, now corrected. In terms of exposure, everything's pretty low, and with just spikes all the way up to about 800 on the waveform. Skin tone, highest point, probably up in here around 512 on this lower right side of his cheek, quickly falling almost to black in the eyes. Okay, so this image, once again, these are all very clean. There's not too much going on here, but it is important to note that temperature and tint are having a pretty big effect on these. Okay, same thing with the white color picker. I'll just put it right here. Let me try one more. Okay, yep, same thing, it's consistent. Yeah, we can see, especially over here, just how yellow and green it is along this wall. And then once corrected out, back to something a little bit more neutral. Yeah, so what we're seeing with this one is just a temperature and tint adjustment. After that, everything's looking pretty standard. Same thing for all these images. They're running a little bit warm, and they're running a little bit green. I think in one case it was running a little bit magenta. I think this one will be a little bit more tricky, because this is clearly such a bright orange light on him, so we can't correct to that. But I think overall it's still running very warm. You can just see over here in the shadows. So let's see what we can do. Okay, so very small adjustments here, but we had a little bit warm on the image, a little bit magenta, so a little bit green, so we introduced some magenta. And then in the midtones, we pushed a little bit just straight down toward the blue to counteract some of that magenta as well. Very small, subtle adjustment, but all of these are very clean. Didn't need too much adjusting. I'm going to jump back to one of these wide shots and take a look at what the colors are doing here. It looks like the same thing where it's pushed a little bit warm. This one looks a little bit magenta in some ways. So let's see if we can correct this by eye. I think it's fine there. That's good. Let's just see what the auto feature gives us. All right, yeah, so definitely running a little bit warm, definitely running a little bit magenta. And in terms of contrast, there's nothing touching black, not even these shadows here. These deep shadows, it's just above black. And the highest point of the image are right here, pushing around 900. with clipping being around 1064. So pretty contrasty, but it could be even more so if we wanted to manipulate it. Put the white point at white, put the black point down at black. So temperature pushing toward yellow, and correct it here. Just really tiny adjustments. Compared to the other shots, these looked way cleaner, so I knew that these wouldn't require too much, but it's still interesting taking a look at them. And also just the common characteristics between all the films we've looked at. It seems that temperature and tint are never set in a way to equalize white. It's always used creatively, and I think that's pretty interesting that just those two parameters can really help determine and sell the looks. So for this one, the exact same thing. You can see that it's running pretty warm. Let's see what tint gives us. Probably just up very, very slightly. Before, you can see in the whites here, very yellow. And after, corrected. But yeah, these are just very tiny adjustments. It's just two parameters that we're adjusting here. And we're creating something really interesting. I really like these shots as well. And this looks almost completely balanced. Let me see what this gives me if I were to put this on white. Okay, same thing. It was pushing a little bit warm. It was pushing a little bit green. So before, after, before and after. That might be such a small adjustment that you guys might not be able to tell on YouTube, but I can see it very slightly. Same thing here. Yep, definitely pushing just a little bit warm. Corrected to neutral here. And there we go. So yep, before and after, before and after. Just two parameters. Massive difference in the image just with the two parameters. This is a more clean and clinical look, and this is how it appears in the movie. Way more stylized, but just two things: temperature and tint. That's all you need, and that looks fantastic. Okay, so because my other videos have been running so long, I think I'm just going to call it here. Try to keep it under 20 minutes. Also, I want to keep the bulk of the video about the color grade, and because this one was so simple, no need to go on for any longer. So down in the comments below, let me know what videos you want to see analyzed next. I've already seen one comment from the last video, and I will address those, see if I can get them downloaded from ShotDeck. And if you guys know of a website where I can download stock footage, where I can maybe find a comparable frame and try to correct it to really look like it belongs in these movies, that'd be fantastic. If you guys have those recommendations, just leave them down below. Besides that, that's it for today.